When we speak of acceptance, we often imagine a kind of moral accomplishment, something admirable, even saintly. We picture a person who has risen above irritation, above judgment, above conflict, and who now benevolently accepts the world as it is. But this picture already contains a misunderstanding. For acceptance is not a superior posture one assumes toward life. It is the abandonment of a posture altogether. Most of us live as if we are in a perpetual argument with ourselves, with other people, and with the world at large. We are forever saying, this should not be happening. I should not feel this way. They should be different. I should be better. And in this endless protest, we fail to notice something rather curious. Life goes on quite happily without consulting our objections. Now, the difficulty with self-acceptance begins with the idea that there is a self standing apart from experience, evaluating it. We imagine a little manager inside the head, clipboard in hand, reviewing thoughts and emotions and stamping them either approved or rejected. But when you look closely, you cannot actually find this manager. You find thoughts happening, feelings arising, sensations moving, but no separate controller pulling the strings. This is important, because the moment you attempt to accept yourself, you divide yourself in two: the self who accepts and the self who needs accepting. And then, of course, you may wonder whether the self who accepts is acceptable. It becomes an infinite regress, a hall of mirrors, endlessly correcting itself. True acceptance begins not with approval, but with honesty. It is the willingness to see what is actually happening without immediately trying to fix it. If you are angry, notice anger. If you are confused, notice confusion. If you feel inadequate, observe that feeling as you would observe a passing cloud. You do not demand that clouds justify themselves. You watch them form, change, and dissolve. We are trained, however, to treat certain inner states as unacceptable. We are told that fear is weakness, sadness is failure, anger is dangerous, and uncertainty is ignorance. So we suppress them. We push them underground. And what we resist does not disappear. It simply becomes louder, more insistent, more disruptive. This is why people who are very hard on themselves often find it difficult to accept others. The same mechanism is at work. If you cannot allow yourself to be imperfect, confused, or contradictory, you will find these qualities intolerable in those around you. You will demand that they be clearer, kinder, calmer, more reasonable, not because they truly should be, but because their imperfections disturb your own fragile self-image. Acceptance of others, then, is inseparable from acceptance of oneself. They rise and fall together. Consider how often we think of people as fixed entities. He is selfish. She is difficult. They are ignorant. We forget that a person is not a thing, but a process. Just as the weather changes, just as the tide comes in and out, so human beings move through moods, roles, and states of understanding. To freeze someone in a single moment and declare, "This is who you are," is to misunderstand the nature of life itself. When you accept this fluidity in yourself, when you see that you are not a static character in a story, but a living, changing movement, you naturally extend the same generosity to others. You stop demanding consistency where none is possible. You stop insisting that people remain what they were yesterday, or conform to the image you have constructed for them. Now, acceptance is often confused with resignation. People worry that if they accept themselves or others, nothing will ever change. But this too is a misunderstanding. Change does not come from self-rejection. It comes from clarity. A muddy pond becomes clear not by being scolded, but by being left undisturbed. When you stop fighting yourself, you gain energy. When you stop condemning others, you gain understanding. From that understanding, intelligent action can arise. Acceptance does not paralyze, it liberates. Let us look more closely at this idea of self-improvement. We are encouraged to constantly work on ourselves, to become better, more productive, more successful, more enlightened. And while growth is natural, the problem arises when improvement is rooted in the assumption that we are fundamentally inadequate. When self-development becomes a subtle form of self-rejection, it creates anxiety rather than wisdom. It is like trying to smooth ripples on water with your hand. The harder you try, the more disturbed the surface becomes. But when you withdraw your hand, the water settles of its own accord. Self-acceptance is not the end of growth. It is the ground from which growth becomes possible. A tree does not strain to grow. It grows because that is what it does. And it does so most fully when it is rooted firmly in the soil, not when it is ashamed of being a tree and trying to become something else. The same applies to human relationships. We often approach others with a hidden agenda. I will accept you once you change. We call this love, concern, or guidance, but it is felt by the other person as pressure. And under pressure, people either resist or conform, but they rarely flourish. True acceptance creates space, and in that space, transformation can occur naturally. Now, one might ask, but what about harmful behavior? Should we accept everything? This question arises from the fear that acceptance means moral indifference. But acceptance is not the same as agreement. You can acknowledge what is happening without endorsing it. You can recognize anger without acting it out. You can understand someone's pain without excusing the damage it causes. In fact, when you see clearly, you respond more effectively. You are no longer blinded by outrage or superiority. You act not from the need to prove yourself right, but from the desire to restore balance. At a deeper level, acceptance arises from the realization that we are not isolated beings. We are not strangers in a hostile world. We are expressions of it. The same forces that shape the stars shape your thoughts. The same energy that grows forests grows your bones. When you truly see this, the harsh line between me and them begins to soften. You begin to understand that other people are not obstacles placed in your path, but fellow participants in the same cosmic experiment, each doing the best they can with the conditioning, experiences, and understanding available to them at this moment. And so, acceptance becomes less of an effort and more of a recognition. You recognize that life is not something happening to you, but something happening as you. You recognize that the person across from you is not fundamentally separate from you, but another expression of the same unfolding process. From this perspective, forgiveness becomes less heroic and more inevitable. Compassion becomes less sentimental and more practical. You do not have to force yourself to be kind. Kindness emerges naturally when the illusion of separation dissolves. To accept oneself and others, then, is not to become passive or naive. It is to see clearly, without distortion, without unnecessary struggle. It is to stop demanding that life conform to your ideas, and instead learn to dance with it as it is. And perhaps the greatest irony is this: when you stop trying so hard to accept, acceptance happens. When you stop insisting that you and others be different, you discover a quiet ease beneath the surface of things. A sense that, even in confusion and conflict, something profoundly intelligent is at work. You are not required to like everything. You are not required to approve of everything. You are only invited to notice, to see yourself and others as living processes rather than problems to be solved. In doing so, you may find that acceptance is not something you achieve, but something you remember, as if it were always there, patiently waiting, beneath the noise of judgment and the strain of becoming, ready to reveal itself the moment you stop arguing with what already is.